Today I was about to change my oil. So I said, well, since I'm about to change my oil, I might as well weigh in on this oil debate. The number one question everyone has is, what oil should I use? Is this brand right here any good? Should I buy this over here? How much, is there any benefits of using this particular oil or the synthetic, conventional, blend, whatever? A million questions. And honestly, I ain't gonna even try to dive into that. Because usually the answer to that question is, it depends. It depends on what you're doing. Are you just daily driving the car? Do you drive it to work, or is it in stop and go traffic, or do you just flow on the highway? Are you tracking the car? Is it a weekend track car, dedicated track car? Do you do auto X? Are you drag racing the car? I mean, it's so many variables and what oil you should pick. Another one, are you under warranty? Being under warranty will limit you of what oils you can use. Because if you don't use those 1, 2, maybe 3 oil weights that's in the manual, when I say in the owner's manual, then, and something goes wrong with your engine, they ain't covering it. So there's a lot of factors that goes into what oil you should use. I'm gonna talk about past oils I've used, and then the current oil I'm gonna start using, and I'm gonna give you my reasonings why. So you can see my thought process I use on picking an oil. Oh yeah, I lay on the ground in comfort. I like to give you history and go back. So, going back to G35, the owner's manual wants you to use 5W30 oil. So, I put 5W30 in there. But, most enthusiasts, they're going to say, well, I want to use the synthetic. Cool. I was one of them. I use synthetic. But on that DE engine, you didn't necessarily have to put synthetic in there. Could have completely got away with any conventional oil or synthetic blend. Because that oil, that engine wasn't doing anything special that it needed some particular oil. So I just ran a 5W30 synthetic, and usually, I went through a whole bunch of different brands. There was a lot of experimentation on that car. I tried the Royal Purple at first, and Royal Purple, they claim like a horsepower boost and all that. I think they say like 7 horsepower or something like that boost. And I would say that was true. They had dyno results and stuff. I would say it was true. But that horsepower boost might last 1,000 miles. After that, they have their modified friction modifier in there. I think it's called like Surelect or something like that. It wears out. And once it wears out, that little boost that you feel when you first put that oil in is not there no more. And I remember noticing it. The reason why I would notice it and pick it up was, yeah, you can feel it a little bit, yeah, but I monitor my gas mileage. So I would notice that in the beginning with Royal Purple, gas mileage would be up here. And even the engine noise level, the NVH, would be engine to be almost silent when it was fresh oil in there. And then after about 1,000 miles or so, my gas mileage would start going down and the engine would be a little bit louder. And so that was like, okay. But then I went and, looked it up. You start doing oil research, man, you going down a rabbit hole. But when you start, then you get a little more understanding that you know, oils can be called synthetic as long as they meet certain criteria. And they can have a conventional oil, and then they can put in their friction modifier. And then now with that friction modifier, the oil is considered a synthetic. So that's kind of what Royal Purple was doing. They had this great friction modifier they add to the oil, and they can call it synthetic, but it wears out. So once I learned that, then I was like, I gotta find me something else. Then I went to Pennzoil Platinum. I think they got a higher version or something than Platinum now, but this is, you know, I'm going back to G35 days. I'm talking about 2008, 2009. So we're talking about like 10 years ago. And that oil, the Pennzoil Platinum, was pretty good. It had, you know, based on, I always use gas mileage. Based on gas mileage, it was consistent all the way from new to when I drained the oil. So I pretty much stayed with Pennzoil Platinum for a while. But one thing I did notice about Pennzoil Platinum was that I always noticed the engine was a little bit louder towards the end of the oil drain interval. So, but that didn't really bother me because, you know, I'm like, well, I guess the oil wore down a little bit. And so it got a little loud, the engine got a little louder, but the gas mileage was the same. So, you know, you're like, oh man, a car enthusiast that cares about gas mileage. Yes, I care. But anyway, so the gas mileage was the same, but the engine got a little louder. And I was just like, whatever. So I stayed with Pennzoil Platinum. But then I traded the car in for my G37X, brand new 2010. And then right around that time in 2010, I don't know, it might have been a little bit before that, but a little after, I think Mobil 1 came out with Mobil 1 Extended Performance. And it intrigued me. You know, everybody goes by this convention of 3,000 mile, 3-month oil changes. That's old school. Let me say that again for y'all. That's old school. These oils are so, I mean, they are on a whole nother level oils now compared to that 70s, 80s, 60s mentality of 3,000 miles. Like you're wasting your money, honestly. That was you're wasting your money by changing your oil every 3,000 miles, because most of these modern new oils can go way past 3,000 miles. That's why you see these manufacturers 10,000 mile oil changes, 12,000 mile oil changes, 7,000 mile oil changes. And they put that in the owner's manual and will warranty your engine as long as you go that drain interval. So doing that 3,000 mile thing is a waste of money. Anyway, off my tangent, off my rant. So, but that kind of intrigued me. 15,000 mile drain interval. You know, I knew I wasn't going to go 15,000 miles with Mobil 1 Extended Performance. But the thought that it actually could was just like, wow, this must be some strong oil. It must have some good, you know, durability to heat. And it's not going to break down. So I put the Mobil 1 5W30 in my G37. And it, like going back to my usual thing, I always check the gas mileage, and I always kind of wanted to hear how the engine sound from fresh oil to right when I'm about to change it. And with Mobil 1 Extended Performance, the sound, the NVH in my engine never changed and I would go about 5,000 to 6,000 miles on my oil changes, and the gas mileage didn't change. Or neither did the NVH, the noise, vibration, and harshness, change on the engine. So that ended up being my go-to oil. Just Mobil 1 Extended Performance. Once again, G37, so let's go give you some history. So the G37, when it came out, at first, they required you to use Nissan ester oil, which is actually a full, what is it, Group 4, Group 5 synthetic. Like, this not no friction modifier synthetic. This was actually a synthetic oil. So, and the reason why they needed that was because of the VIVO system, the variable valve event lift on the VQ37 VHR engine. So, and that V stands for VIVO, and it would be loud with conventional oil. The VIVO system would run loud. So they came up with ester oil, or they paid somebody to come up with it. Either way, Nissan came up with this oil or contracted out somebody to make it so that it would quiet down the VIVO system. And at first, Infiniti was kind of saying you got to use ester oil. But now, you know, people went from having a $40 oil change to now you talking about over $100, because then not only were they requiring it, they were taxing on the bottle. I mean, think back then, it might have been $20. I'm talking about 2009, 2010. It might have been $20 a bottle, and you needed 5 bottles. So we're talking about $100 just for the oil, and then we're gonna pay for the labor. So we talking about at least $142 oil change, and people going from $40 to $142 oil changes. And people were like, and we just talking about the luxury customer. Even the luxury customer kind of complained about that. But then Infiniti conceded, and they were like, well, yeah, you can run a conventional, and we recommend a synthetic, else you're gonna have elevated NVH out of the VQ37. So knowing that ester oil was in the original design, I eventually started doing 4 quarts of Mobil 1 and 1 quart of ester. And I pretty much stuck with that for the rest of the lifetime of my G37, all the way up to when did I get rid of it? 167,000 miles and 8 years. I pretty much stuck with that for the rest of the time. Then, you know, I had an M37, did the same thing. I added the ester oil because it had the VQ37. So I added the ester oil to it, and then with Mobil 1. And cars ran like a dream. Gas mileage consistent. NVH was consistent. Now we move on to the Q50. So I'm new to turbo engines and then direct injection engines. You know, I have my Q56 you see back there. That's also direct injection. But that engine had been a while and been around a long time. And V8s are a little, I guess, I don't know if the word tolerant or, I don't know. But it's not as, that car ain't picky with gas, ain't picky with anything really. So I wasn't really worried about it too much on that car. But on this car, I was like, I wanted to make sure I used the right oil. And one of the main things you look for in an oil for a turbo car, especially direct injection, is they have a new rating called SN+. So I have been coming from Mobil 1 Extended Performance, and the first thing I did was look up Mobil 1 Extended Performance to make sure it was SN+ rated. And lo and behold, it was. And it seemed like they've been SN+ rated for a minute. So Mobil 1 was already ahead of the curve. And then, so particulars on the SN+ rating is just that with direct injection, if the car burns a little bit of oil, it will, you know, gunk up on the back of the valves, and eventually that can hurt performance. And then the SN+ oils are supposed to resist that, resist sticking to the back of the valves. And that's a big deal for maintenance down the line. You know, when we talking about when these engines getting 80, 90, 100,000 miles on them, and you're running a conventional oil that wasn't SN+ rated, then you're probably gonna gunk up all your valves. So Mobil 1 had that. And then, you know, I had already been using ester, and I was like, I'm gonna stick with that. So for the first oil change, or 2 oil changes I used ester with it. But then I was like, is ester oil SN+ rated? I mean, that oil was designed back in like 2008, 2009, but I couldn't really find if it was SN+ rated or not. So since I couldn't find it, and then really the ester oil was designed for the VQ37. So I just abandoned ester oil in this car. So I just went straight Mobil 1 extended performance. And then just for kicks, I tried Mobil 1 annual protection, which was also SN Plus rated. And I really didn't notice much of a difference between Mobil 1 extended performance and annual performance, which I'm sure that they are chemically different. But as far as what I do with the car and driving it, didn't notice anything different. So I didn't see the point of I'm not gonna pay the extra money for that. And then if you go to the dealer, they're using Mobil 1. They're not using extended performance, but most dealers are using Mobil 1 full synthetic, which is like supposed to be one rung below the extended performance, but might protect better. But we'll get into that later. So that leads me into the next thing. So, I'm always diving into that rabbit hole of oil. So I'll go read all the different articles, the marketing. And then what I love to do the most is try to find somebody independent who's not, being paid to say this is better, or at least being paid not to give it a bad rating. So in my search, I came across this oil blog. Like and matter of fact, one of my buddies sent it to me. This guy named 504 Rat. And he has an oil blog. I'm gonna put a link in the description to it because I like to give people credit when they, if they, informing me. And the 504 Rat guy, he claims to be a mechanical engineer. And he did, like absolute failure test on oils, where he basically wanted to see how long would the oil film on the metal last. Like how much pressure can you keep rubbing on the oil film before it finally scratches the metal. This is like bare bones, absolute, what do you care that oil does? The oil is supposed to separate metal from metal and be the medium in between the metal, the lubrication. And he wanted to test that, basically called the film strength. He wanted to test the film strength of the oil. So he came up with this test where he rubs the oil. He brings the oil up to 230 degrees Fahrenheit. And then he rubs the oil. He got some machine. He rubs the oil put the oil in the thing and then rub a piece of metal against the other metal and try to see how much pressure, PSI, he can press down while it's rubbing before it finally scratches the metal. And he'd been doing this for years on a whole bunch of oils. And he actually made a list of oils that, basically listing there how much PSI it took before the oil's film strength broke or collapsed or failed, whatever terminology you want to use for that. And I thought it was real interesting that he did that. He has the blog is long as I don't know what, and it probably take you a couple of hours to go through it. And I actually went through it and read his stuff. And he goes deep without going too far into real technical terms, because he's trying to make this a layman's version to give you some sort of objective guide of which oil actually is the strongest. And then he gives his he lists them all out. He got like 200, 300 oils on there. And every brand, everything, Euro spec oil, all the way to the US spec oil, he got it all on there. And I just was curious. I wanted to see which was the strongest oil that you can buy out of the store. And I actually did not have to go down the list that far to find the strongest oil you can buy at the store. And the reason why I'm saying buy at the store is some of the other, like, the stronger, just to give you a little hint, the strongest oil you can buy at the store actually was number 8 on his list. So the oils before it, the top 7 oils before it, were either what I like to call boutique oils, where you got to order them off the internet, and then this is your AMS oil and Motul and all that stuff that you usually don't just see in the store, or Redline, you know, that you don't just really see in the store too much. And then there was a lot of oils to where you would blend it with a friction modifier. And like I said, if y'all, you know, I don't really want an oil that needs that doesn't have the friction modifier inherently in the design of the oil, where they kind of add something to it. I don't really want to use that type of oil. So number 1 on the list was an oil that you can buy out of the store, and then this boutique, you know, meaning that you got to order it off the line. That's my terminology. I mean, you got to order it offline with this boutique friction modifier. When you put those two together, that number 1 oil was the best you can do as far as film strength. Then further down the list, which some of y'all are going to be relieved to find out, is your AMS oil, made like top 5 or 6 oils, was AMS oil signature, not the AMS oil race oil. The AMS oil signature. That's kind of interesting. But anyway, so yeah, so if you already using AMS oil, you've made it into his objective top 10 list. But number 8 on the list was an oil that you can find in Wally World and Costco and every other big box store. Guess what it was? I think it cost you $19.99. You'll probably pass it up when you go in the store. You'll pass it up because you're like, that's too cheap. You know, I drive an Infinity. Guess what it was? Quaker State. Quaker State 0W20 is number 8 on his list of top film strength. The oil that's going to take the most extreme beating before it actually starts to scratch metal on metal. Number 8, Quaker State 0W20 Ultimate Durability. It's in a green bottle. I think it has like a gold cap on it. And then it's SN Plus rated. And their marketing says this is a new blend for specifically small turbocharged engines. And then 0W20. But I guess I might be late to the party. If you, at least in where I live, if you go in the Wally World and look for Ultimate Durability Quaker State in the green bottle, that junk is almost sold out all the time. And it's 20 bucks. And these people, or it's just because it's 20 bucks, it's sold out. People like, whatever, this is my beater car, I'm gonna throw this 20 bucks oil in there, not knowing that 20 bucks oil is number 8 in film strength, according to 504 Rat. I was like, wow. And then way down the list, you know, to my heart's breaker was Mobil 1 Extended Performance, was I think number 21 on the list. But then what stood out more about the Quaker State Ultimate Durability was that it did so well in the test that 504 Rat was so surprised that he raised the temperature from 230 degrees Fahrenheit to 275 degrees Fahrenheit to see that, you know, will the heat just kill this, like kill the oil? And it didn't. Like, it got the same, I think he said it was like, you know, no more than a 14% or less 14% or less PSI after raising it up to 275 degrees. Most of us will probably never get the oil that hot, especially if you got a red sport with an oil cooler. You're not gonna get the oil that hot because it's cooling the oil. But if you ever did and you was using $20 Quaker State 0W20 ultimate durability, you will have no worries because the film strength is not gonna break down. I was like, wow. So, because of that, and this oil change I'm about to do, I'm gonna switch over to Quaker State ultimate durability. And it's gonna save me $10 off my oil change. All right, that's it. I'm going with Quaker State. 5W30 though instead of 0W20. The 5W30 version has got a slightly less rating than what the 0W20 had, according to 504 Rack. But it's SN Plus, so, and it had the same characteristic of when he heated it up to 275 degrees Fahrenheit, it barely lost its film strength. And then this is what I use: Mobil 1 extended performance. Well, I think this is or they call it A now. It's because they made the annual protection one, so this is the long lasting one. This oil will sit in my car for between 5,000 and 6,000 miles. Sometimes it might even go a little more than that. Just depend on my schedule. And like I said, all-wheel drive, red sports, about 6 quarts. I personally, I think it's a little under 6 quarts in the factory service manual. I just put 6 quarts in there and call it a day. If I'm over by a quarter of a quart, I personally don't care. Some people might be more anal on that. I'm not. So, and here's the big one. And then you notice on the big one, they got protects Martin turbocharged engine. So this is the new version of it specifically for these direct injection cars. So if you don't have direct injection, or you got a 2014, 2015 Q50, going to this oil, there's really no real benefit for you. Of course, stay synthetic, but going to these SN Plus does nothing really for you because you don't have direct injection, you got port injection. But if you got direct injection, SN Plus is what you want. If you got port injection, this doesn't really matter. That's a lot. Pour is real nice. Since I'm not really measuring, I don't care about getting every drop out of here. So if I got a little bit left in here, I just get around 6 quarts and I'm good. So I ran it for 5,800 miles. That's how much I ended up running the last oil. I think it was annual protection I put in there. Alright, let's reset it. There we go. That one's reset, and then you got to do it here too. And all you do is hold these two buttons at the same time. And it's reset. Alright, y'all. Till next time. Don't forget to like and subscribe.